fall for this stuff because we do.
I apologize for the pause in our usual programming. Setback after setback, folks, you know. It's one thing it's easy to fall into that ego trap of, well, when you try to do something right for humanity and you're over the target, that's when you get blasted from all sides, economically, health-wise, whatever it may be, technical difficulties. It's easy to sort of play that game. But maybe it's a self-deception, Maybe what I'm doing isn't that important and that's just an ego freak thing and I'm just falling for it. I can only hope throughout life that I'm not deceiving myself. I think that's an important prayer to offer up. But in any case, I believe what I'm doing is important in my own little way, in my own little pocket of the world, and so it's worth it for me to keep on keeping on. Personal preamble aside, welcome to the George Seeley House. This is in Galveston, Texas, in Galveston County, Texas. We're told the builder of this house, George Seeley, was an outstanding Galveston businessman in the second half of the 19th century, accumulating considerable wealth and associated with numerous Galveston business ventures. If this house was designed by Stanford White, as present research seems to support, well, it's the only structure in Texas and possibly in this section of the country by that architect, so it's odd to assume that. Questions of the designer aside, the building itself is clearly of outstanding design and a notable example of the neo-Renaissance style, and I would say it's representative of the wealth that was concentrated in Galveston in that period of time. As you can tell by this rather out-of-focus picture here. Still, what a delightful, puzzlingly extravagant home. It's an odd-shaped door, isn't it? A little short and squat, isn't it? Perhaps the dwarves of Darrenhall aided in its construction. Is that for a nerdy, musty reference? Hey, there's our little friends here. That appears to be a fireplace that has never been besmirched by the burning of logs. Some random colorful pictures they've thrown in. Odd here when you see the tile that apparently once covered the entire exterior, making it look similar to a temple you might find in a place like, Bangladesh or Mexico. Which I guess Mexico would be more proper to assume, seeing as how we are in Texaco, hinting of a glory of a colorful past gone by the wayside. Look at those pants. Just casually observing. This looks like a portion of the Alamo. Perhaps it is. And then, of course, what happens in these surveys, as we find time after time, is it switches from these rather glorious, extravagant homes out to the rural vernacular. And this is in Palestine, or Palestine, but knowing Texans and their proclivity for butchering names. Looking at you, Amarillo. But Palestine, in Anderson County, Texas, is where this gorgeous looker is located. 1854, the initial construction, we are told. A George Passani home, and the architect is unknown and the builder is unknown and the condition is bad. It was built by Blank Gathright following the Civil War. This property, together with other property, was sold to the family of the present owner, while the scale of the cornice suggests at one time it might have been a 2-story house. It stands now as originally built, so that suggestion would be false and strange to even bring up. Notable in this part of the survey, these early days of the information gathering here, you see that there's no call sign printed on or written on the photograph afterwards. In fact, they're incorporated into the picture with these little signs here that they put somewhere in the photograph next to their little measuring rod here, which is for size and for color balance. If my guesstimations are correct. I apologize for my voice being under the weather. It's rare. First time I've been ill in years. Corresponding probably with the amazing plethora I've noticed, the overabundance of new clouds that's been gifted to us by our overseers. I've noticed the striking patterns in the sky lately. Tip of the cap to you, governors. Why, thank you for bestowing upon me the gift of illness. At least that's the way it seems. What do I know? All I know is it ain't right what they're doing to us. I foresee a future in which we can perhaps 3D print bazookas to bring these ships down. Although that puts innocent lives at risk, and also that's an encouraging of violence, so I would have to say that that's a terrible idea, and no one should do it. In fact, I might have to cut this from the record. Forgive my sick brain for even suggesting such a thing. The very idea. Moving on from the lovely named George Passani House, we're going to jump over here to the Mallard Alexander McNaughton House. There's hyphens abound in that name. And it was built for Judge John B. Mallard in 1848. His widow, who retained the house, married Judge William Alexander. What? Married 2 judges? That's strange. I suspect some sort of scandal. But either way, it was sold to the McNaughtons in 1870, and these photographs are from 1936, to give you an idea of how probably not long for this world it is. Or was. Not much to see here in these old wooden structures. Not much that's suspicious anyway. Here's a red brick schoolhouse, also in Palestine, or Palestine. Used to be called the Egan House. Not sure why, as the data provides us no information about this, other than it was built by the Masonic Order as a school for little girls. Said to be the first school erected in Palestine. It was later used as a public library until it sold to the family of the present owner, whom I'm guessing is Miss Nell Egan. While the dormers are out of scale, they are somewhat distorted by the camera, we're told. Otherwise, it's a well-designed, one-story residence with cherry red brick and jack arches that are painted white. And here's the rear, although I don't recommend looking at the rear of schoolgirls or their houses. That's a nasty habit. And all of these were built in the 1850 Masonic order, huh? Interesting that all these are wooden, but the Masonic one is built in brick. I don't know what it means. You figure it out. You friggin' do it. Heck do I know. I know this is the Schwerter House, also in Palestine, and also built in 1848, though there's no architect or builder to be known, in bad condition, and the windows are undoubtedly new. That's what we're told. Although, I'm not sure how you can tell that from the appearance of their current condition. Looks rather boarded up and dilapidated. There's a better look of the new windows. This is an interesting little... Was this a former door? It looks like a former door that they somehow boarded up. Very rustic in nature, these are, and very far removed from what we were looking at earlier in Galveston, which seemed to be overflowing with old world splendor. And these... looking a little let down, let's say. I mean, I guess something's built in 1850 out of wood. By the time these surveys are done 80 years later, what can you really expect? It's just interesting that they're even on this survey. I guess documenting the vernacular was important at the time. If there's any structure that's built in 1850s, it does make sense to categorize it, although there's not much to look at. And honestly, if I were in for sensationalism, I would skip all of these, but that's not the name of the game. This is a plodding, tiresome journey through the surveys as they're presented to the American public, warts and all. That's what I cover here. So I grin and bear it through these boring parts, but still, there's often weird little gems and things to be learned here. And hopefully this one is no exception. Oddly enough, I can't really find anything about this one. I do find the way that it's on these little brick columns to be interesting. You know, you wonder why you wouldn't just do brick the whole way up if you could. But I suppose we'll never know, because this one is strangely missing any documentation that I can find. Actually, let me try that again. One second here. Okay, this is Governor Joseph D. Sayers' house. Nice to see a governor that's not living so large, you know. Most of the time they're in a fancy pants mansion. So the present owners, at least in 1933, which is about 100 years ago, so I'm going to guess that they're the past owners at this point. Who knows? They could be long-lived wizards. Joseph D. Sayers had the house built in 1868. The First National Bank of Bastrop acquired this house at public auction in 1903, and it was purchased by Geo H. Perkins. I'm guessing that the Geo, though, stands for George. Just seems like the writing on this is smudged out. I guess his name could be Geo. Apparently it's occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Perkins, who rented out part of the house to Mr. and Mrs. Frank Wilson. So apparently it's bigger than it looks from these pitches. But the house stands on the original site, which was built in 1868. It is not believed that an architect's services were used. The builder's name is unknown. A Captain Knowles felled and stripped the walnut, and he might have been the captain out here building houses, huh? About the governor a little bit, Joseph Sayers was born in 1841, the son of another Sayers of Mississippi. And at age 10, his family moved here to Bastrop, Texas. He was educated in the Hancock School and the Bastrop Military School, entered the Confederate Army as a private at the age of 20, wounded twice, served 2 years on crutches. Served 2 years on crutches? Okay. Still in combat, I guess. Retired in 1865 at the age of 24 with the rank of major. He was elected state senator at the age of 29 and lieutenant governor 35. In 1879, he married Orlean Walton. He was elected governor in 1899, and he represented Texas in Congress for 14 years, and he served 2 terms, and he died in 1929, advanced age of 88 years. That's the story of the governor and the governor's house. And I will say, of all the senators and governors that we write about in these surveys, this one seems the most reasonable home. I mean, most of the time these governors have these insane homes. So kudos to you, Mr. Sayers, and your crushes, for not letting corruption go to your head, at least as far as your home is concerned. Congressman or senator for 14 years, and you still don't have you're not living in a cathedral. Well, from what we can tell, that there appears to be a straight shoot. It's amazing how many Confederate generals it's like one year we're at war, we're killing each other, the next year I'm just a senator next to you. It's just very odd. I don't understand how that worked. Drop everything, go fight a war, come right back, put your suit and tie back on, and start writing legislature. What a strange time, if the stories are being believed, you know. Which they're not, so forget everything I just said. Not that I have any reason to doubt that story, but, you know, at this point, man, skeptical of everything. I don't even know if my own real name is my own real name. Or is it, Jack? This is the J. Lee Wilbarger home in Bastrop, in Bastrop County, and J. Lee Wilbarger is the present owner and occupant. Purchased this from his mother, Mrs. Harvey Wilbanger. What? Okay, Wilbarger. Sorry, Harvey Wilbanger is an old cocktail, which would be funny if it was named after this person's mom. But Mrs. Harvey Wilbarger has nothing to do with the antiquated cocktail in 1910, at least as far as I can tell. And Mr. Brooks built the house in 1852 on farm lot number 2 Main Street. He sold it to Harvey Wilbarger, and his wife in turn sold it to her son. At some point, there was some modifications. They added a small bedroom and bath upstairs. The date of these additions is unknown. There was no architect and no record of the identity of the builder. The house stands on the original site, and Josiah Wilbarger, the father of Harvey Wilbarger, and Reuben Hornsby, who selected their headright leagues in 1830, some 10 miles north of the old San Antonio Nacogdoches Road, near what later became Bastrop, were the first outside settlers of Stephen F. Austin's new colony. Josiah, the father of Harvey Wilbanger, so the owner of this house's father, was scalped by the Indians and lived for 12 years afterwards to tell of his experience. Okay? But that's the story of the Wilbarger and their scalped father, one of the earliest colonists here, and what a nice little house set aside out here in Bastrop, Texas. Here's an interesting one. It looks rather out of place. Looks like it's seen some better days. This home here, Henry Crocherone House. Forgive me if I'm butchering these last names, but that's the way it looks phonetically. That's good enough for me. This here is and Bastrop as well. The date of erection is 1857. Very remarkable. Architect unknown. Presently, well, at least at the time of this survey, 1933-ish, it was in good condition, although it doesn't really look like it, to be quite honest. Here's the backside of it. It was built by a merchant in the year 1857 of Dutch descent who came here from Staten Island, New York. Wow, from Staten Island all the way to Bastrop, Texas, eh? And after entering the merchandising field, he begins acquiring property. After he'd been here several years, he married and built this house. 2-story house, constructed almost entirely of cedar. It is the first house in that locality to have windows with weights. 5 rooms on the lower floor, 3 on the upper. The stair rail and of hand-carved walnut is quite distinctive. All cedar was cut and milled on the owner's property and finished by hand on site. Miss Belle Jones furnished this information. Thank you, Belle. That is the stair rail of hand-carved walnut. Whole house built of cedar, eh? I bet that thing's creakier than hell, but still a remarkable feat. Now we're going to jump to a brick building, this washed-out picture. The Piercy House. Not much listed here. Built about 1875 by an unknown architect. Joseph Jung was the builder, and originally this house contained 2 rooms, out by a hall with a small porch, originally covered wood. These bricks were molded by hand by Joseph Jung in his brickyard near Bastrop. Joseph Jung was a native of Australia. The bricks are unusual in size, and the rest of this document is completely washed out and illegible. Not much else about it. A. Wiley Hill House. 1857 was the initial construction, and it's kind of a plantation home with your typical southern colonial. Your square columns here in the front and a small balcony over the front door. See this a lot. 6 fireplaces in this house, 4 on the first floor, 2 on the second floor. I'm not sure if we're going to see the inside, but apparently there's a nice, let's see, this one's quite a mansion. Houses. Mr. Wiley Hill came to Texas in 1835 from the old South in Bastrop County before and during Texas's fight for independence. He saw service under General Sam Houston, and in 1837 he returned to his old home and married and brought his wife back to Bastrop. 20 years later, builds this home, and the owner had purchased it for the purpose of preservation. And it shows. 1857 home. It's very, well, it shows some regards. 200-year-old house. Looking pretty good. Getting pretty good. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. Pattern here. You're getting sleepy. The fireplace is hypnotizing you. Remove your shoes and insert them into the flames. Fireplace is weird. Has a strange affinity for the smell of burning rubber. Wow. And that's a real live fire. This is after you put your shoes in there. That's what it looks like. Which is a shame, because those are some nice penny loaves. Later on, we'll fish the charred remains of those coins after the fire burns out. Don't worry. We'll get them pennies back. Tom Ireland House is the name of this one. It's also known as the Dog Run House. I would just shorten that just to Dog House from the looks of it. But apparently it was built in the 1840s. It's the most typical dog run house in this section of the state. The most typical. I don't know how it comes to get the most typical, but whatever. Built of cedar logs, and one of the rooms had a fireplace, which in all probability replaces the original one, which is built of mud and sticks. Not sure how you have a fireplace of mud and sticks, but I guess it's possible. One of the oldest in the locality, occupied by Tom Ireland, who was no relation to Governor Ireland. Just let it be known. The builder is also unknown. One wonders if the last name Ireland is just from an old, immigrant books or whatever they're called, where they say, what's your name? Where you from? Tom Ireland. That just becomes your name. Excuse me. There's another look at her, the old beautiful house there. I can't believe it. It's probably, I don't even know why you feature that in there. I don't remember dog run houses, but wow, look at this old boy. Just gonna park that horse and buggy there. There it's gonna stay till kingdom come. How funny. What a far cry from the Galvestonian homes, huh? Out here in rural Texas, Bastrop County. With such a sprawling land mass as Texas, I'm not surprised. We're probably going to see a whole lot of this. Jumping around, styles, you know what I mean? Texas is a vast place. I've seen a lot of it, and I still probably haven't seen much of it, if you know what I mean. This is the Aaron Burleson house. It's about 19 miles south of Austin, Texas, which probably means by now it's just buried in mass suburbia, my guess. It's built in the 1860s. It's owned by the Austin National Bank at this point, which it's a one-story brick house, large fireplace in every room. It's on one of the highest hills in the vicinity, which was done to escape the menace of rivers overflowing in the lowlands. It's a very definite Mexican influence, you can tell by the brick-patterned cornice, at least that's what we're told. And we're told this is an important example because it shows the extent the Mexican influence penetrated the state. I mean, that's a funny way to phrase that, considering it was part of Mexico at one point. I wouldn't say Mexican influence penetrated the state. I would say the state penetrated Mexican influence. But however you want to phrase it, brick for the house probably came from one of the local brick plants. There were several at the time, is what we're told, although no examples are given. Ceiling is about 10 feet tall, made of about pine boards, built by Colonel Banks, later owned by Aaron Burleson. Look at that picture, what a beauty. It's generally thought that Aaron Burleson married a daughter of Legislature Hardiman, who enjoys the distinction of being responsible for naming the president capital of Texas, Austin, after its founder, Stephen Austin. Wow, how creative. Place looks a little run down to be owned by a bank. Get out there and fix it up. Untuck that shirt, buddy. Take off that tie. Pick up that shovel and trowel, or at least replace the windows. My golly, what's going on here? The story behind this guy is he apparently rode here in this bark canoe during one of the floods. I made that up. I hope that was obvious. The present owner is a ghost. See if we can fix that. There we go. We'll give him the old George Washington haircut and expression. Kind of looks like a pharaoh. Get your lovely bow tie and your buttons. There he is. That, now play it back, Jimmy. You can see pictured here above the mantle the home's builder. This is a historical fact you can snack on and chew. We'll fix that and post and make it look real. We're gonna wow the audience with my amazing drawing skills. I'm mean with that mouse and pixel. Give me that Windows Paint, bro. Me and a Mona Lisa in friggin' no time. Alright, I'll stop showing off my breathtaking art skills. I don't know what this house is. They ain't give me no information. Oh wait, yeah they did. Strike that, reverse it. Jimmy always plays me out in post-production too. Anytime I say to cut something out, he leaves it in. Probably because there is no Jimmy. So I feel comfortable complaining about him. Because he'll never hear this. Well, because he's the one saying it. You know what I mean? 1857 was the date of this place. Builder Charles Crenshaw built of pine, cypress, oak, and walnut. Not a tree was spared. Probably built by Charles Crenshaw in 1857. The character of the house is quite typical of the earlier houses that we see in the timbered section of the state, which the brick sections of the state look down upon. But still, Mr. James Blackwell was the original owner. He was one of the earliest settlers in the vicinity. So Charles Crenshaw built it in 1857, but Mr. James Blackwell was the one that lived here. And that's... I get a little crawl space there. I wonder, it must be a basement. That might be the first one we've seen in this little area. You never know. Actually, definitely looks like two different eras of construction. I mean, my lord, frick's going on here? Double door. All the way across the sky. Oh my lord. That picture definitely looks crappier than the one that I drew. Expression on that face. Why would you agree to a portrait of that? After someone painted that, I'd be like, what? Is that what I look like? Like, perpetually, like you just are staring at ghosts that no one else can see? Look at that. It's a blunderbuss. Wow, I think I actually have this exact gun. It got me thrown off a plane one time in Prague. But that's another story. A story for another day. And it's way less cool than it sounds. So I'll just leave it at that. So this here is part of it's a plantation house, basically is what you're looking at here. So I guess what we should talk about here is this is the plantation house, and you see the fireplace, you see the dining room, there's a servant's quarters, which is in deplorable condition, as you can tell here. There's a limestone foundation for most of this, and we're told that Sterling C. Robertson, the impresario, had a contract with the Mexican government to settle 90,000 acres of land in the Salado community, which is where this is located. His son, E. Sterling C. Robertson, comes here in 1853, donates land for the Salado College, of course, 20 acres of which were to be used by the college, and the remainder divided into lots and sold, the proceeds going to the building of the college, and also built the first courthouse. This information comes from Mr. and Mrs. Sterling C. Robertson III, and this must be the barn. Weird how one side is completely limestone block and the other side is wood. Must be added on. I don't know. They don't give us any more information about it. This is a Texas plantation complex. We're told it's the most complete surviving example of a Texas plantation complex marks, and we're told that this is the slave quarter, covered in hay. This is Shady Villa, built about 1858. Architect unknown, builder unknown. Foundation is stone. The walls and interior partitions are of timber. There are no other existing records or information. Shady Villa indeed. That's where you wear your dunce hat and sit in timeout, right there. No rocking either. Just the only chair we had available. Interesting construction all around. Like, what is this? This is a weird dilapidated wall here. This looks like part of the foundation at some point, and then it sort of peters off. And I ain't going under there for fear of spiders. Just let it be known. Looks like they got their own little water tower here. Their own little, for the water pressure, at least for the first floor, comes from there. I mean, this is probably the little outhouse. Interesting. And well, of course, all this is reckless speculation, and that's the class picture of which they all graduated at the same time. And an empty bottle of Gordon's gin. Or baby oil. Depends on if P. Diddy lives here, or if it's been co-opted by the unhoused. Officers of New Farmers Market. Look at that little underground cafe down there. That's pretty cool. This is, must be entering the new part of town, huh? You're probably waiting for me to tell you that information, ain't you? Well, maybe I'll just withhold it, huh? Maybe I didn't feel like it, huh? Maybe? Who am I kidding? I totally do. I feel like it. Why would I withhold from you, my loves? This is the James Vance house, despite its apparent remodel as a source of local business. The Farmers Marketing Corporation, R.C. Cattell, as the secretary, owns this place. It was bought in 1933, owned from the Campbell Realty Company, who leased the place as a farmer's market since July 1932. Imagine that. 100-year-old farmer's market. From 1919 to 1932, the occupants have been of a, how shall we say, nondescript nature, some no better than squatters. How dare you talk down on squatters. It was spasmodically occupied as an artist studio, a rooming house. The daughter of James Vance, the granddaughter, Miss Mary Eugenia Vance Winslow, quite a name, lived in the house until 1919, sold it to the Realty Company in 1926. A number of ornamental features have been removed since Miss Winslow moved out of the house, including the old brass gas-burning chandeliers, the wrought iron grills for the basement windows, certain mantels, and practically all vestiges of the original surroundings, excepting the flagstone walks are gone. Fences, outhouses, gardens, all gone. And we're told this house was constructed in 1850. It took 4 years. John Fries is credited with being the architect. Character of the moldings, by comparison with those in other buildings he's known to design, would indicate that he was, indeed, that. The house was built primarily by stonemason, and his two sons, assisted further by Indian labor. This data, I should add, is not compiled and not guaranteed by the Library of Congress. Hey, the ceiling medallion. Giggity, giggity. Delicious. The builder, James Vance, and his brother, John Vance, came to San Antonio from New York, as they all do, in 1840, making short stops at New Orleans and Little Rock on the way. They soon established an important merchandising and banking house, and evidently were people of considerable wealth and culture. They owned a number of slaves who remained with the family as servants after the Civil War. Doesn't sound like slaves to me. James Vance gave each of these servants a home and a small plot of ground after they became too old to work. Yeah, a home and a small plot of ground. Not a bad deal. It is known that the home was a social center of the antebellum period. Robert E. Lee and other notables were frequent guests and informal visitors. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here, but it looks like an old bent-up, highly ornamented, what was that, a lamp? Lamppost? Remarkable. And besides, all materials in the house except the stone, which is native limestone, were brought from New Orleans via Indianola, the old seaport. All structural lumber and wood, trim are cypress except stair railings, which are walnuts. Besides being provided with an underground well and cistern in the yard, the house is equipped with a zinc-lined tank in the attic space, designed to catch and store rainwater, which was in turn piped to the various rooms. Silver faucets were recessed in the partitions and covered with small access doors. That's amazing! Much of this information comes from the granddaughter of James Vance and Miss Sarah Winslow Johnson, the daughter of Miss Winslow, and Miss Rena Maverick Green, cool name, granddaughter of John Vance, all living in San Antonio today as of 1933. And they were considering tearing this down and putting up a post office. No telling if they actually did. That'd be a shame. And if you did decide to do that, I don't know why this is in the yard, but bleep you. Bleep you. That bit about the tanks, the zinc-lined tank in the attic, I don't think I've ever heard that before. Not to mention a underground well and cistern in the home. That is quite remarkable. Is this either the site of a car accident or just the same car moving around in the picture? No, it's old photographs for you to stay real still. Told anyway, to stay real still or to be blurry. Real still like these two or like that guy. They might be scarecrows. I don't know. Look at the urns up here though. How beautiful. What an amazing building. How do you go from that rural vernacular to this? Striking. And I like the wild, wild west of parking lots here. No lines. You just park where you can fit in, but being, polite enough to leave the the address visible. Probably just for the picture. But still, what a bunch of cool old cars. God, what a great world. Seems like just the peak of American empire. Sure didn't last long, did it? Not till we, quote, won the war. Seems more like once the villains were defeated, we just became the new villain. Yeah, someone's gotta do it. And why shouldn't that someone be us? That's supposed to be me devouring the world's trust. I hope it was obvious. That's the sign of a good joke when you have to explain it. That's what I'm told anyway. Forgive me if this is a terrible video. Forgive me, for I won't be able to forgive myself, no matter how much you beg me. I won't do it! This is the Menger Hotel in Alamo Plaza, back in San Antonio in Bexar County. The first hotel of any importance to be established in Southwest Texas. Sorry, other hotels. It is located on Alamo Plaza, just 100 yards south of the famous Alamo. Imagine that. It retains the same name as when it was established in 1859 and has been in continuous operation for over 68 years. Really? 1859, huh? There were no other hotels west of the Colorado River at the opening, so that should make you guys feel a little bit better, all the other hotels that I just totally dissed. The opening was attended by a celebration which was long remembered. The stage line soon found that the travelers preferred to come to San Antonio rather than stop in smaller settlements with uncertain accommodations. Thus, the opening of the Menger Hotel had a definite influence on the growth and the popularity of San Antonio and Southwest Texas. It was operated for 18 years before the first railroad was built here in San Antonio in 1877, and although the bar room was the most popular, no rowdyism was permitted. All you rowdies can just go up the street. Well, that was rowdy defined. Well, anyway, the Menger Hotel has been operated as a first-rate hotel. The bar room was a general meeting place where convivial spirits gathered to slack their thirsts, relate their experience, exchange reminiscences, and no doubt transact businesses. It was operated from its opening until 1871 by W.A. Menger, and at his death in that year, it was taken over by his son, L.W. Menger. Menger? You figured out. At the time, it was sold to J.H. Campman, whose estate still owns the property. The original part of the building was built of the materials salvaged from the wrecking of the old brewery, which stood just to the rear of the hotel. So was it made from the wreckage of an old brewery, huh? Wow, that must be some wreckage. He made this three-story classic design iron railing balcony beauty. At one time, there was a stable which existed between somewhere over there to accommodate the horses and carriages. Many famous personages have been accommodated within the spacious walls of this hotel, including Theodore Roosevelt, William H. Taft, and Warren G. Harding. And this information comes from the files of the San Antonio Express, dated 1927. Wow, that is an amazing building, right by the old Alamo. I wonder, I may have even stayed in this hotel once. I'd have to look back at my files, but I once did stay in a historic hotel within walking distance from the Alamo. Perhaps it was this one. Remember, the interior had an amazing elevator. That's all I remember. I was super drunk the whole time, probably, and engaged in much rowdyism. I'm just kidding. They wouldn't have let me in. At least the bar, anyway. You can be rowdy in the room. Look at this amazing column here in the back. Like, what is this? Looks like a remnant from an earlier time. And this looks like an old picture. Wow, what is this? Just hanging out in the dirt with their rocking chairs? What a strange scene. I wish I knew more about it, but really that's all they're telling us. Let's see. Let's find out what we're looking at here. Well, never mind. I didn't want to know anyway. The Gustave Uhl House. 1855 was the initial construction here. Architect unknown, builder unknown. We're getting used to that. Fair condition, limestone, pine, cypress, and oak wood building materials located in the heart of the early German settlement in San Antonio. The ceilings are quite high, we're told. What we're not told is their choice of narcotic to get them in such a state. That was a terrible joke. And there is no other information about this, except it was bought in 1890 from a German guy. Oh, cool. Good beer on tap. Just plain and simple right there. Ain't no messing about. You want yourself some good tobacco? Tables for ladies? What? Tables for ladies? What? What about tables for dudes, brah? Dudes don't need tables, especially if we're prone to rowdyism. We like to stand up. How about you guys? You like to stand up when you're rowdy, or you like a sit-down rowdy type? Mr. Frank D. Brady was the builder of this here place, 1894, we're told, and it's a small two-story unusual house in this section of the state, we're told. It appears to have been built earlier. The second floor is accessible only by an outside stairway. Interesting. One room on each floor. The ceiling on the second floor is canvas, which is tacked directly to the second floor ceiling joint. Very curious. What a place. And I wouldn't go up that staircase unless that's the only place where you'd find the ladies' table, or the cold beer, or really anything of interest. Don't go out that door. Good golly wackles. I like the way they ran out of room on this plumbing special sign, but they're like, you get the idea. And we sure do. I hope this is an outhouse. Wait, what happened? They changed the name of it? Aw, dude. That's sad. Now it looks like it's no longer has tables for ladies. I guess we'll have to go somewhere else. Considering my party is just nothing but ladies. I mean, am I right, ladies? At that point, Jimmy, you should enter the sound of crickets. If my massive bank of pre-recorded sound effects and samples hadn't died with my hard drive, you would definitely hear the crickets. But since I don't have that right now, you'll have to do some magic. And that's a command! And you will do it! And I don't know what this little place is, because those little signs, they ain't turning up nothing. You know, as an aside, even despite the existence of numbers like these, they don't match up. Like, no state, it's almost as if they've changed the cataloging or indexing system in these files so many times that these numbers are almost meaningless, which I find very frustrating. If you're going to open something up to the public, why make it so hard to research what it is? You punch in, for example, this, TEX3-32 into the search of Library of Congress. You ain't getting this building. You're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff, which, why? Are we that inefficient? Is this culture that inefficient that literally even in the Library of Congress, where I'm sure it's someone's job getting paid probably $250,000 a year to keep this organized and they can't even do it. They still have to just botch their only job. It's pathetic. And if there were a digital comment box, I'd be scribbling furiously right now. I don't know if I get this crap. Like, it's pathetic. There's 7 or 8 pictures here, and you have to do an image search on Yandex, which is a Russian-owned search engine, in order to find out how these pictures are. Isn't that ridiculous? I find it to be ridiculous. How is it that Russia has cleaner streets and more organization and less censorship than America? I guess it's really pathetic where we've come to as a broken society and culture. So brush up on your Russian, folks, because we might be moving there soon. And because I've run into a dead end here, and I've just committed probably a verbal snafu that might get me thrown off YouTube, I want to say, I'll see you soon. Hopefully.